Hi, welcome to Hashtag We Know Because Chuanka. Ooh, it's been a while. It's been a while since I last heard my voice speaking like this. Oh my goodness. I sound great. I sound more alive. Welcome to Hashtag We Know Because Chuanka. I took a break that is longer than the usual mid-season break. It was supposed to be for a month because, we usually take off July. But May had me spent and I took the break in June. I thought, to be honest, June would be enough for me. But I took the break, stressed out, and then guilt also came in because I felt like I had taken a break at the wrong time. June being the Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And then also the way how the cases kept coming in. If society is silent about the men's mental health, and then the month starts with guys or men dying by suicide, and then you're taking the break in that period, it felt like, come on now, did you really calculate your emotions? And yet, really, things just happen in life and you do not truly have full control of whatever might come at you. So yes, I took the break in June and it was interrupted a bit with some live conversations. We were supposed to have 2 of them, but only one was had, which was supposed to be published that very weekend of the week, but things happened and now here we are. We're going to be listening to it. I'm going to be giving it to you, and perhaps one day, one time, we shall have our resident psychology back with us to have that part 2 covered. But how have you been? Tell me, what's up? What has been happening? I'll update you. Let us first I'll tell you about myself. Let us first update the podcast a little bit. I've been seeing the metrics running and I'm like, are these guys kidding? Even when I'm silent, people are still going for the podcast. And I think it's, in a way, this proves to me that the podcast is like a legacy. If I walk away, if I ever, of course I will. If I ever, I say it, of course I will. I don't know why I keep saying if I ever. Or the day when I leave this earth, I believe that there will still be something, there will still be impact going on in people's lives. And let me not say so much, but welcome back-ish, because this is more like a curtain raiser to part 2 of season 5. So yes, let us get into the conversation we had, the live conversation we had with a couple of men, with our resident psychiatrist. Did I say psychologist before? The resident psychiatrist. We had a live conversation, which had people engaging and asking questions, which were also answered. We had some interruptions, and I'm not going to let you hear them. So if you hear, if you get to a point where you feel like the conversation isn't really flowing, be sure that was the moment when we got hacked by porn bombers. I think that's what they called it on the internet. Yes. Without further ado, let's get into it. Thanks for waiting for me. So, if you have anything that you would like to share with us, please do not hesitate. You can use the in-call messages, or you can always wait for the Q&A session where you get to interact with Dr. Dennis. He will be answering all your questions. He is not as shy as I am. You can see his face. For clarity, maybe it's not just me being shy. I have my desktop does not have a camera, so we're just going with this. And well, the guest speaker is none other than Agava Dennis, and I'm sure he's the one that you would mostly want to be looking at. So
I'm also sure I'd agree with you there. Maybe the guys wouldn't agree, but well, your desktop is the real problem here.
That's right. So yes, June is Men's Mental Health. we should have had these engagements a lot earlier, and I'm certain we might even have chosen to take on a full month, but it so happened that this was the same month when I had taken a digital break. But I had to come and catch the month before it leaves us. So we're going to have 2 sessions, starting with today, Tuesday, and the other one will be there on Thursday in the morning, 10 a.m. So for the very first one, I truly would wish to welcome everyone that has joined us so far. Mr. Sembacha Hikima, Mr. N. Kamanyire, Mr. Rodney Chegundu, and Mr. Oswald Ruberanziza. Welcome. Thank you for joining us as the early birds. So, Dr. Dennis, this is Dr. Dennis. I don't think I've introduced him very well. He is our resident psychiatrist. Proudly so. I think this is the first podcast with a resident psychiatrist. So we're going to be having a couple of topics to discuss. He's going to take us through it. The very first one is not the very first one. The core topics for today are the unique ways in which mental unwellness is manifested amongst men, or how it manifests amongst the men, and the adaptive and maladaptive coping mechanisms. So, Dr. Dennis, the mic is yours.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm very delighted, as always, by you on this very great podcast. Who am I? To be asked from time to time to come and speak about all things mental health. And particularly because, yes, it's one of those that we need to be talking about a lot more when it comes to not just mental health, which already is a big topic, but in particular to the men. We all know at the beginning of the month, I think we had 2 gentlemen that committed suicide, and I think it was big on the news. And suddenly, everyone was all up in arms, asking what's happening and what's going on with the men. But I think this is something that's been going on for a while, and I'm glad that we can be able to have some conversations, pertinent conversations around, men's mental health and how we get to support and help people, men out there. For those who need help, those who are not well, and for those of us who are well, to ensure that we can stay well, that we can remain mentally well. And for those who have crossed over into illness, to know what illness looks like and where we can get help, because there is definitely help. We really shouldn't have people committing suicide. Suicide is preventable if it's identified early and if it's dealt with in time. You've mentioned a couple of pertinent areas that we should be discussing today. Mm-hmm. And I want to start really by first setting the stage on, what's mental health, what's health, to begin with, because I feel like jumping all the way to part C of the question, if we don't understand what health is or what mental health is, it may be difficult for us to understand coping mechanisms and maladaptive coping. My teacher back in the day used to say that you must start, first principles, begin with the first principles. It's easier for us to understand if we begin with the first principles. So if you allow me, I like to prefer by beginning with what the first principles are, and you'll notice that everything else becomes a lot easier if we understand these terms that we keep using. If you allow me.
Yes, please. Yes. We need it. Because there are a couple of misconceptions that we see on social media. It being a big conversation, there is everyone coming up with their own ideologies, and you're like, come on now. So it would be best that we have the best guidance from the professional themselves.
Yeah, great. Very good then. So I'm just going to share a couple of slides, if that's okay.
Sure.
Just I find that it may be a bit easier. Okay, so let me just. Okay, can you?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Okay, very good. And when I move the slides, are they moving?
Have you tried to move it?
Yeah.
I think it's stuck on mental health, state of well-being.
Okay. Let me try something else. Let me try something else. What about now?
Yeah, they're moving.
Okay, so you will. Okay, great. I notice when I go into full screen, then it doesn't move. So let me just keep it here.
Okay.
Can you read?
Yes, a state of well-being in which the individual realizes.
Okay.
Blah blah blah.
Good. Thank you. So just to begin with health, when we speak about health, and this is by the World Health Organization, it's a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. Two things I want to point out when we look at this definition. So it has to be complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Okay, so not just the physical health, because most people, if I'm not feeling headache or I don't have a fever, I'm not vomiting or diarrhea, then I think I'm well. I think I'm healthy. But it's not just the physical elements that need to be checked out, but also your mental and your social well-being. So there should be complete physical, mental, and social well-being. But I also really like the last statement there. It's not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. So I find that particularly when it comes to mental health, and we're going to get into that, most people, look up schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. If I don't have disease, then I think, no, I'm okay. But that's not necessarily the case. I may not have a definite illness or a disease, a categorical disease that needs you to go to Mutabika, for example. But that does not necessarily mean that I'm healthy. Okay, so the absence of disease is not enough, for one to be declared healthy. They must have a complete physical, mental, and social well-being. So as you can see, there are three main brackets there: the physical well-being, the mental well-being, and the social well-being. I'm sure you've noticed, and this is what happens often, people come to a hospital not feeling well, they take a blood sample, do a malaria test, and what that's doing is checking your physical health. And before the tests come out normal, then they will say that, no, you're fine, you're okay. You should go home. Then they'll say that you're okay, and they say that you're stressed. Yeah? Has anyone encountered something of the kind? Have you before?
Personally, not, but I've had people say things like,
See?
Right, Kamanyiri has something to say, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, Agaba, when you talk about that, there is a moment I thought I had malaria. Mm-hmm. So I did a number of tests, and all of them came out indicating that there was nothing to do with malaria. But then the last test I did with someone still said the same thing, but then he said, perhaps might be stressed.
Mm-hmm.
The signs I had were connected to malaria. because I was totally weak. The whole body was weak. Yeah. So at the end of the day, he told me, just go have some rest for some time. You will get better.
I agree. Thank you very much for sharing, Oscar. And it's great to see you again. It's been a while since we had a chat. But yeah, so again, the physical aspects were screened and assessed, but they didn't go into the other aspects. So for them to say that, no, your blood work is okay, you're fine, is not very accurate, because they didn't go ahead to do an assessment of your mental well-being or to do an assessment of your social well-being. So it's more than just the physical stuff that we need to be paying attention to. Anyway, today we're here to talk about mental health. So if we just zoom into mental health and we ask ourselves, what is mental health? And what do we mean when we speak about mental health? And you see, so mental health is a state of well-being. This is how we define it, and this is, again, by the WHO, in which an individual can realize his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. That's what needs to be present for someone to be declared mentally well. Okay. Again, there's nothing here about hearing voices. There's nothing here about, trying to kill themselves or trying to overdose or addicted to a particular medication. None of that is listed here, because those are illnesses. We're going to talk about that, on Friday, on Thursday, sorry. But you can see that there are so many different things that could have an effect on any one of these four things that we are mentioning here. A good example that I like to give nowadays is the COVID pandemic. When the COVID pandemic was announced, for many people, it affected their ability to realize their abilities to work productively and fruitfully. If I'm the kind of guy who sells passion fruits on the road, and now all the cars have been locked at home, I'm not going to be able to work productively and fruitfully. And I am most likely not going to be mentally well, because this situation that's going on has affected my ability to work productively and fruitfully. If my daughter was sick and in the hospital, it might affect my ability to work productively and fruitfully. And in that sense, it's going to affect my mental well-being, my mental health. Okay. If for one reason or the other, I'm not able to, I lose my job. And so if I don't have a job, maybe I can't contribute positively to my family, then that's going to affect my mental health, because I'm not going to be able to make a positive contribution to my community, being that I don't have a job. So these are the things that we look at and that are pertinent when we speak about mental well-being or mental health. Any thoughts or questions around this?
You can raise your hand if you have any questions before we go forward.
Because ultimately this is, and I'm going to be coming back to this a lot, this is really the core of it. If we have a good understanding of what mental health and mental well-being actually is, then you'll notice all the other things sort of fall in place as we go along. Yeah. So it's important for us to recognize this. Most of the times, these are not the things that are often talked about, but it's the core of it all.
Doctor, I think I like the way how you have set the stage for us, especially for the questions on whether we have experienced moments where we actually feel sick physically, but there is nothing to really describe it as. And it's even worse if we are going to health facilities and they tell you there is nothing that we are seeing. And like the example that Kamanide gave, that he went from one person to another until they highlighted the bit of mental wellness.
I agree. And just to dive into this a bit more, because again, you see, the typical example is I'll go to the hospital when I feel fatigued, right? When I feel sickish. But how about when my performance dips? Okay, so if I am in office and now I'm getting into the common manifestations of ill mental health. Someone who's been a high performer, someone who's been, in office 8 on the dot, leaves at 5, he's always the first to submit his reports. And then for some reason, we start to see his performance dipping. We know this guy is a brilliant artist, right? He's putting out one masterpiece after another. And for some reason, that starts to decrease. Do we then stop to ask what's going on with this person? Do we then say, hey, I think you need to go get help, right? If you notice someone who suddenly gets easily frustrated with the usual things, and again, you can see this a lot on Twitter, right? So people begin to go up in arms over things like traffic, or things like because there are some of what we call the normal stresses. And I should ideally be able to cope with the normal stresses of life. But when you find someone is finding it very difficult to cope with the normal everyday stresses, then usually, do we stop to say, are you okay? So suddenly the comments in the office begin to nag you a lot more than they were before. The small things start to get onto your nerves. So you're not actually able to cope with some of these conflicts that come with living with people, in the everyday, day to day. Do we stop to check and say, man, are you okay? Because what I'm talking about now, this is what shows that your mental health is beginning to be compromised. And this will come long before you feel fatigued, long before you can't get up in the morning, or before you're having difficulty sleeping at night. When I find that I'm having, I can't quite concentrate, this particular task is one that I usually get done in 2-3 hours. Now it's been 3 days and I haven't really gotten into the task. Do I stop to ask myself? Do I think about going to get help? Okay. Are you with me?
Yes, I am. I don't know if everyone else is. Emily's, are you saying something?
Yeah, I'm actually listening to Doctor, but I'll talk after he has finished that explanation he's trying to give us.
Great. Now, I'd like it to be a conversation, so please feel free to jump in at any one point. This is a conversation, not a lecture.
Okay, fine, Doctor. Just that I was trying to understand and connect dots when you said that some people actually get freaked out by some things that we see normal or that are very normal. Actually, I use the word that are very normal. Maybe I would love to say that we need to understand in life that what you actually think is normal to you or is obvious or happens most times, to some people it doesn't. So somehow, somewhere, that's where we go wrong. And you think, I thought this was normal. This was okay. You shouldn't get freaked by this. But then to someone, maybe it's the first time they're experiencing it. I can give an example like of traffic jam. You expect like every Ugandan, for example, in Kampala to be used with a jam. But someone will tell you, I have no idea of what this is. Maybe they never travel around Kampala or they never use a taxi. So it's a challenge, but it happens anyway. You're right. Thank you.
No, I agree with you, Emily. And by the way, thank you for raising that up because it helps me to clarify my statement a bit more. I'm not speaking about, in comparison to other people. No, I'm speaking about an individual. Okay, so if I'm the kind of person who, I'm in traffic Monday to Friday, right? And other days, I'm not really bothered by it. But if I find that for some reason today, I found it very, very difficult. So this is about, as an individual, the things that have been going normally for you start to not be coped with.
Yeah,
okay, so at my workplace, for example, and I've worked here for maybe 5 years. It's getting harder for me to get that particular task done. Okay. So I'm a doctor, for example. It's what I do. I go to the hospital, I see patients. So, and of course, work is stressful. It has the stresses. And I've been doing it for a while, and I've never had any particular conflict with it. So if the time comes where I now, who's been quite good at what I do, is finding it harder, it means I'm not able to cope with my normal stresses that I've been doing in the past, then that means something is not right. I'm not well. Are we on the same page, MB?
Yes, I get you. I get
Great.
you now.
So this is not...
If you're like at your workplace, everything should be by now. For example, if you've been there like for a year, but all of a sudden then you start something is very difficult, so something is not right. I get it now. Thank you.
Precisely. So here I'm speaking about an individual. So, for example, we all have our own abilities, okay? And each of us has our strengths, probably different things. So if something that has been a strength for me, and I'm not able to realize that particular ability, which I've been doing in the past, then my mental health has been compromised. Okay, we all have different levels of productivity at the office. Probably there's someone who's a very high flyer, another one's not a very flyer. But if me, who has been a 40% deliverer, starts to hit in 30%, there's a problem. The one who's been a 90% achiever, if they start getting to 70 and 80, or 40, then there's a problem for them. So this is very individual. I like that you pointed this out. I'm not trying to compare people as our own strengths. And so if in the things that I've been doing with ease, now it's getting difficult, or I'm not as productive as I have been, I'm not making the kinds of contributions that I've been making, then something needs to be brought into question. And I don't have to wait till I am feeling like I have malaria. No, I think it's important for us to begin to pick this up early.
Right. I like the example that you've given. It has taken me back to, was it 2014? Must have been 2014. That's when I suffered a terrible heartbreak that led me into contemplating suicide. And I remember in that same space, I think there were rumors going around about rebels attacking UCU. On a normal day, I was the kind of person who was like, yeah, whatever comes. We can always go through it. But I remember being very terrified for even staying in my room. At that point, I no longer trusted being on my own, because every time I entered my room, the only thing I was thinking, how do I stop this? How do I get out of this situation? Yeah. And then now there are threats, and I'm looking over my shoulder every minute, and everyone is like, it's just a rumor. But I had stopped believing anything I am comfortable with, because I was like, I don't think I have the right decision making, something like that. Yeah. So I get that kind of thing. There was something that changed in me after that.
Your normal is not, I'm not doing things as I have been doing them before, even if they're not very overt. So it's important for us to perceive this from that perspective, because it sets the foundation. By the time, just to give a bit of statistic here, by the time someone is clinically depressed, by the time we're to diagnose you to be clinically depressed, you've been unwell for at least 2 to 3 years. Okay? So there's been these things happening, but not being paid attention to. Somehow they're not being picked up. And then they just keep on accumulating until the point when we now cross over into illness. So it's important for us to have this at the back of our minds as we get into this conversation. So you'll notice that this is how it's going to manifest itself. Okay? So when we talk about mental and wellness, particularly around men, it's going to manifest itself in pretty much the same ways. So even if we start from young boys, right? In school, one of the things you'll notice, school performance starts to drop. Okay, this guy has been an A student, he's been passing very easily, he starts to drop. Wondering, okay. Oftentimes, then they'll say, you're now being stubborn, you're not paying attention in class, lie down, we're going to cane you, etc., etc. But these are signs. Something is telling us that something is not well. Just go ahead, even at the workplace. Okay, so this guy came in, he's been very good, employee of the month, 1, 2, 3 months, and suddenly his performance starts to drop. He's not performing as well as he should be. Could be in a relationship, right? I get to meet this guy, he's a good guy, all is well. And suddenly he's not being as good of a partner as he has been. Could be a father, could be a mother. Again, they've been doing their work very well. They've been taking care of the family very well. Then suddenly you notice that, things are beginning to change. It could even be, sexually. And you see a lot of this nowadays, People are saying, this person is not performing. His abilities have gone down. You see that a lot as well. The way this person has been performing, even sexually, starts to drop, starts to go down. You're wondering, hey, what's up with this guy? Yeah, he's not, performing as he used to. And that's pretty much because something is being affected elsewhere. His mind is not well, and it's going to manifest in his ability to realize his potential, his abilities, the things that we know him for. This guy has been the one that pulls the party together. He's the social guy. He's the life of the party. He shows up, everything is going to be okay. And suddenly, comes, sits in a corner, like, hey, man, what's up? Suddenly he's not showing up for parties anymore. So we know him to be the party guy. Suddenly he's not able to do that anymore. Now that points us that he's not able to realize an ability that we know him to have, or we know him to be able to do. To about coping with the normal stresses of life, working productively and fruitfully. We see this a lot. Guy gets his first job, he seems to be very productive. Suddenly, we don't know where his money goes. He's been working 5, 10 years. What there, right? No one knows what happens to his money. Okay, so we think, but something's happening. He's not productive. He's not being able to work productively or fruitfully. And also he's not making a contribution to his or her community. Okay? Any questions or any thoughts at this point before we can move on to something else? Are we able to sort of picture it now?
Yeah, we can move on.
Great. So very briefly then, how does it differ from an illness, from a mental illness? So a mental illness is a condition, a health condition that has a negative effect on the way an individual thinks, feels, and behaves. Okay, so our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions are rooted in the mind. And when someone is mentally unwell, then the way they think starts to change. So, for example, someone who suddenly thinks that life is not worth living and they need to end their lives. Someone who suddenly thinks that they are not capable, they are not good enough, they are, they start to hallucinate or to come up with all the different sorts of negative cognitions. So the way they think starts to change. The way they feel starts to change. This is on the emotional level, where you can have people getting very, very sad for long periods of time. That's more depression. Or they can get very excited and very elated, which we would call mania. And also the way they behave changes. Like I mentioned, we're not going to get into the depths of this, but once someone then starts to be mentally ill, they have an illness, they have a disease, one that needs to be diagnosed and treated. But that's not the scope for our conversation today. But it's just something for us to know. So this is how we tell that someone has a mental illness. So that's what makes it stand out. So I just want to talk about now, more so in the context of men, in terms of the society and how society has perpetuated, so to speak, the current, I could call it an epidemic of mental health issues. For a long time, most men have been sidelined when it comes to things like how they express their emotions, or the way that girls are raised is very different from the way boys are raised. The expectations that we have on boys is very different from what we have on girls, and that has contributed significantly to the mental health picture that we're seeing today. And there are a couple of things that stand out in a particular sense. Oftentimes, when someone is struggling, particularly with the things I was just mentioning before, they're going to tell you to man up, right? That's the thing. You're a man. What do you mean you're struggling? Yeah, there's that phrase. How do you mean there you're struggling? What do you mean you don't have money?
Right.
What do you mean you can't make it? Right. So there's a way society expects that if you're a man, you must have your shit together. There's no excuse.
There is a post that I saw. I think it was yesterday. I think it was about that famous Nigerian actor. I think for the people that used to watch Nigerian movies back then, I think that guy was mostly a witch doctor. His name is, let me see, I think he's Pete Edochie. And he was like, I don't know if he stated it or someone quoted. I don't know. I don't remember what I saw in the post. But it was something related to his wife being a lawyer and how he has been the sole provider and the person who pays the bills and everything. And whatever the woman makes is her own. He doesn't ask anything in regards to how much she earns. He doesn't know how much she earns. He never gets to enter into that kind of conversation with her. And for him, in conclusion to the post, he said that if you cannot take care of your family as a man without the support of a woman, you have failed. And I was like, come on
now. Yeah. And that's it, People are not willing to listen to why. It's as simple as, what do you mean? You're a man. You have to have it figured out. So it's very simple. Man up. What do you mean you're struggling? No one wants to hear. Provide, take care of the family. So that's a lot of the perspective that men, right? What do you mean? No one wants to know what they're struggling. It's as simple as, have you paid the bills? Yes. No, it's not even an option, right? Because then you're failing as a man. Yeah. I'm overwhelmed with work and personal life. Again, be a man, suck it up. What do you mean you're overwhelmed? No one wants. In truth, no one wants to know, right? Suck it up. Let's move on, right? Like, we would expect women to come and tell us how they are struggling. Don't be a woman, right?
Right.
Keep quiet. Just deal with your stuff, right? So no one wants to hear which problems you have, and that's very negative, because then you find that most men are going to keep in a lot of the struggles that are going on. They're going to have to just sort of, again, like they say, suck it up and keep quiet about it. Don't talk about it. Get into your head. Find a solution. Okay, and I mean, we've seen our fathers do this. We've seen uncles do this. And so, of course, that's how we're going to be. That's the expectation that's going to come up, as a man. Why are you talking about what's going on in your life? Why are you telling me about what's going on at your workplace, or your boss hasn't paid you for a month? Why are you even opening your mouth to speak about those kinds of things? Lots of women who gossip. For you as a man, don't talk about those things. Just find a way to solve it. And all this is very, very harmful, okay? I want to express myself. I want to talk about how I feel. You're being weak. That's a sign of weakness. Yeah, don't be weak. And I'm sure these are things that we've all had, and we tell this to young boys as well. Okay, boys don't cry. Okay, it's the girls who can afford to cry for you. Don't cry.
Be a man.
How dare you? You're not being a boy. So we're not even allowing these young boys to grow. Okay, you also are not expected to ask for help. Somehow that's something that is only for girls and for some men are not expected to ask for help. It's also led to a very poor health-seeking behavior. Oftentimes, by the time a gentleman walks into the hospital, something is very terribly wrong, because the typical thing is, no, you'll figure it out. Yeah? You'll find a solution for it. It's what is with society has in a sense conditioned it that we should be able to figure things out at any one point in time. So you're not allowed to speak about if you're having any challenges. No one even stops to ask how you're doing. It's almost always expected that by default you're going to be okay. So even if you actually were not well, oftentimes you don't know where to go or who to ask. And even if you try to, oftentimes you're not going to be listened to, or no one really cares very much. So our society has contributed greatly to where we are, particularly in regards to mental health of the men and the boys. And I don't know, people could just share their experiences around this. But what's your take on this?
Thank you so much. Well, I really, really like the way, Doctor, you're bringing these ideas out and things that have been running onto our minds. In this case, I honestly would love to say that for me, it's something that kind of bothers me so much. How a parent comes up with I hope you're hearing me well, because my background is noisy. I'm at school and kids are playing.
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Perfect. Just for me that they're distracting me. I feel like I'm not flowing. So you find a parent has two children, a boy and a girl, and the way they raise their children is somehow different. Not because they don't actually equally love their children, no, but because one is a boy and another one is a girl. Somehow society detects on how we should do things. So me, the biggest blame, I would put it on society. I feel like society has really affected and contributed to mental health when it comes to the male gender, because we bring in this idea of a man is meant to do this, a man is not supposed to do this. And where do we get this from? From culture. Yes, culture is very important and we embrace it, but we need to accept the fact that somehow it's just becoming a word and we are not practicing culture that much like it used to be a long time ago. Yes, men used to hunt and you stay home as a woman to cook and look after the children. But now everybody wakes up in the morning. Husband and wife have gone to work. Everybody is hustling, working. So are we still practicing the African culture that was there 50 years ago? But we still... So when this man comes out to cry, I have a problem, they bring in this element of you are a man. Men don't do this. They refer it to culture. So for me, I would love that we accept the fact that we have changed and we are not practicing culture anymore like it was a long time ago, and we give a chance to the male gender. Yes, but of course there is this fear. I think if we could say, fine, let the men cry, let a boy child not grow up and be strong as men. I don't know, there is that fear that we have, because if I raise my son, he cries, mommy this, and I attend to him, or my boyfriend is telling me, I'm sorry, I couldn't provide for you this, and I'm like, it's fine. Don't you think they may tend to just take it like that, and before you know it, they actually become, it becomes a habit. But for me, well, going back to the first point I stick on is we should accept the fact that the way people of long time ago used to behave and how the society setup is not like now. So we should accept, and when you're raising children, we should raise them equally. I mean, with World Health Organization, they've come up with equality, gender equality. You find they are having workshops for young girls, but the boy child doesn't actually have. Or if there are 10 workshops for the girls, there are like 2 for the boys. Why not them being equal? So that even the boy child, grows up knowing, fine, I am also cared for. I don't have to hustle on my own. Baganda have a saying, they say, kweyiya or kuyiriba, So it doesn't have to be only that. Even us, even the ladies, we can do that. Actually, if you find a lady who has grown up seeing, like looking up to their brothers, somehow they are stronger. They have the capacity to do a lot. So I believe if we work together as a team, we are both equal, both ladies and men, or gender equality being embraced, I think we can do much better, and the boys or the men will not have the fear to open up and tell us. And it connects, I suppose, I'm not yet married, but I suppose that it really connects in that if you have a partner, he may not tell you how he feels. Maybe he's worried about something, but he can't open up because he never opened up at any one point. And yet you could actually be there to help them, because they tell you your partner should be the person you should tell everything, but you find this guy cannot tell you anything. And at the end of the day, you think you're one, but you're actually two different people in a home. So for me, I would advise and say, let us embrace the new system that we are living in, and we accept that, yes, culture is there, but there are some things that we are no longer practicing. And if we are to listen to the girl child, even the boy child should be listened to, so that we grow up together and we have responsible men and women that will live mentally well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. I think you Emily raised some very good points. Yeah.
Oswald, you had your hand up at some point.
Oh. Go ahead, Oswald.
Yeah.
Yes, you're allowed to say.
I wanted to ask a question, but I want to first say something a little bit in relation to what Emily has said and Doctor has said as well. I like the whole mental health drive for us men, and I like the way it's enabling us to talk. But I also feel like because of the way everything is contextual these days, there's an agenda behind everything. At a certain point, if I'm sharing what I'm sharing and people are not getting me the right way, they are going to twist, my whole story, and it's going to come out as something else. That's another big problem. For example, a man's role is to provide and protect. Primarily. Yeah. I have my family and I'm supposed to do these things. If I cry in front of my kids, if I cry in front of my wife, is she going to see me the same? Will I be able to stand in front of her the same way? Will I be able to continue to carry out my roles the same way? Because, it's hard. I won't lie. It's very hard, especially after having an experience of sharing how I feel with, for example, someone else, and maybe they don't understand it. And I'm like, you know what? This is going to be a very complicated journey. I feel like I should probably just keep a few things and not have certain conversations, because I may not be understood the way I'm supposed to be understood. Because honestly, I feel like there are things that fellow men will understand that women or my kids may never understand. Like, only a man is going to understand what I'm talking about, like factually. I don't want to, it's not even an argument. I feel like there are also things a woman is going to have to say that a man may never understand. So if we are having this whole, let us open up, let's be careful with the way we are going to put it out, because some men are just going to be like, this is a joke. And I feel like I would be one of those men if you just come out and say, oh, let's put our feelings out there. Yes, let's put our feelings out there and be intentional about it. Let's put our feelings out there, and then the laughing stock, or it's going to come back and, affect me a different type of way. Because I feel like we see these things a lot today with the whole LGBTQ, the whole feminism. Context matters, man. Me, I'm not about to start saying how I feel only to come out and I'm now, we are labeled something else, I want a man to remain as a man. that should be what it is. So if I'm point, I know that there's a cross I'm supposed to carry. So men, please share to what you feel like you can. Don't rush to do what you feel like you can't. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Oswald.
And then now, Dr. Gawa, I had a question.
Yeah.
As you were speaking, you were saying that mental health is, and there's a difference between mental health and mental illness.
Yes.
But I got lost when you said mental illness is when one of the examples you gave of it was like when someone felt like they didn't feel like they wanted to live. It's contemplation of suicidal feelings or acts. Is that mental illness? That's a question.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
Good. Yes.
do the thing, for example, the toxins, alcohol or drugs, do they play a role in our mental health or our mental health? Okay, I think I'll understand if it's illness or health after you've answered the first question. But like, I want to know if alcohol and smoking and drugs has a big impact and role in our mental health. And
Okay.
those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Oswald. And I think I'd just like to answer some of these questions. And maybe also make a few comments on what Emily and Oswald have submitted. I'm very grateful to have you guys on the conversation today. And just to put things into context, we are speaking about a situation in which a person is not well. Okay? So we're not saying that boys shouldn't be strong, shouldn't be boys. We're not saying that men shouldn't provide. We're not saying that men shouldn't be able to do what they're expected to do. But what we're trying to talk about now is in the situation that this boy has actually been playing football and got injured. They need to make known that they have been hurt and get treatment. If you keep telling such a boy not to cry, yet he actually has a fracture, then you're not doing him any service because he's not going to get that checked out. That fracture is going to get worse. By the time he comes to the hospital, it may even be harder for us to treat. We might have to amputate his leg. Why? Because he had an injury and couldn't speak up because boys are not allowed to have an injury or not allowed to cry. Now, same thing. If I am a husband and I'm not okay for one reason or the other, we won't talk about what that is, and I'm actually finding it difficult to provide as I have been. Okay, we're not saying don't provide, but I'm a provider, I've been doing it, and for some reason I'm not able to. I'm finding it difficult. I'm having challenges. I need to be able to speak about this and get help, because if I don't speak out about it, it keeps getting worse, and before long, what could have been solved now is not easily fixed. You know, a stitch in time saves 9. But if I don't get that stitch in time, then before long, what could have been done to mitigate the problem is 10, 15 times worse. And so we're not trying to say that men should stop being who they are or doing what they need to do. No, but if they are facing challenges, we talked about those 4 things. If I am not able to provide as I should, if I'm finding it difficult to realize my potential and my abilities, then I need to speak up, get help. There might be a situation that needs to be addressed. So the sooner I do that, the better. And this is really, just to give an example, I know that I'm trying to say that we shouldn't talk. Of course, I also agree with you. It's important to know who you can speak to and what you can address in what particular context, right? I may not have to sit down with my kids and tell them what's going on, but I should have a support system that I can actually go to and discuss real things. The typical example is you have a group of men who meet at a particular bar every weekend. They watch the football games together. They discuss all the political things that are happening, but they don't know each other's names. They don't know where this, what's going on at home. They wouldn't know if a guy fell sick. And I'm sure you've heard of this. This guy suddenly drops dead, and what were with him on Saturday? No one knew he had a situation. No one knew he had a problem. One of his gentlemen we talked about at the beginning who committed suicide. People who were with him, people who called themselves his friends, had no idea that the guy was carrying such a heavy weight because he never talked about it with anyone. Emily mentioned you have a partner, you have a spouse who's supposed to be someone that you can confide in, and you're being consumed with the situation. You're now unwell, and you can't discuss that with anybody. You don't have a support system around it, and that's going to definitely affect your mental health gradually. So we're not going to say that you should stop being who you are, but when you notice that you're not well, when you start to have challenges in your ability to perform, in your ability to cope with stress, in your ability to provide, then you need to recognize that there's a situation and act on it immediately. Okay, the sooner you act, the better. Yeah, so it's important for us to not, to understand the context in which we're talking about this. We're talking in the context of unwellness. When I am not able to, I should be able to speak out about it to the right people and get the help.
Sorry about that. I think we have been attacked.
It's okay. Sorry about that. So it's important for us to know when to speak up. It's not so much that you have to go ahead and speak, but when there is something that needs to be talked about, it's important that you do. Because if not, it has a greater toll on your mental health and your ability to function and to provide. Yeah, so I'm not saying that we need to just overturn the tables. No, but I think it's important to pay attention when there is need to have that need addressed. Okay, yes, we've talked about culture, but culture has never been perfect. Culture needs to improve. So when we notice certain things about the culture that are not healthy, then we need to also be brave enough to confront them, to address them, and to improve them, right? A couple of years ago, girls were not going to school. That was the culture. We identified it, we changed it. Girls weren't allowed to vote. That was the culture. We identified it, we changed it. So certain things can change, especially when we notice that they are harmful. So if we notice harmful things about the culture, then it's high time we address them and we changed those particular harmful things so that we come up with a positive alternative, one that's helpful. Then also, you also talked about drugs and alcohol. So all these, we call them psychoactive substances. What they do is they actually change the chemistry of the brain. They are very, very harmful to the mind as well. When we have a discussion on illnesses, now mental illnesses, you'll notice that addictions, so drugs, alcohol, smoking, and the like, are actually potentially going to lead to addictions, which are illnesses of the brain.
Oh my goodness. I think these are the challenges of having open calls to people. I've tried to block and remove those with strange names.
Dear. Or maybe stop who can present. I don't know if that's doable. Okay, well, I don't know, where were we?
I'm very sorry. Like, they've really disorganized us. But I think you were giving some responses to Oswald. I think what the response that I had in relation to what Oswald had said, or the comments that I had, was the point where he mentioned that you don't just come on out as a man and start putting out your feelings. I feel like it's a general thing for all of us that we cannot just go to anyone or just be on social media and just say anything without, having the ability to weather what might be thrown back at you Of course, some people are terrible. They are mean. And like what we have also just experienced here, that we have been, interfered with. People are showing us porn videos and things like that. But to get back on track, it's always best that you have someone that you can confide in. It's not that you're going to go at the city square and scream and cry for help, which you can do, by the way. When you feel like it is your way of letting out your voice or your way of expression, perhaps you could do it, because I think we've seen people that cry for help publicly and help comes in. I don't think it makes you less of a human being if you ask for help. And I think it's the same thing that I shared earlier on my Facebook, where Simon Sinek said that if we can learn a skill where we learn how to accept when help is offered and also learn how to ask for help, it is one thing that would help us move forward. So I think it is the core reason as to why we are also having this conversation, especially for the men and their mental health. As long as you can have someone that you confide in. Somewhere Dr. Agaba mentioned that you can find that men congregate or hang out, but they do not have a full awareness of what the other person is going through. And I think this truly manifested during COVID, when I was hanging out a lot with my cousin and his peers. And I started, talking about mental health. Some were shutting me up. But then when we'd be having personal conversations and chats, you find that there are bigger conversations to be had. There are things they're struggling with. Someone is talking about himself growing up in an abusive home and they cannot really look at their father eye to eye because there is that kind of friction or image that they have. There is another one who was struggling with alcohol. It was all fun and games. Like this guy would come in and like, yo, have you come with your drink? Because he was drinking a lot. And that's when he shares with me that he is trying a lot to go off alcohol, but it seems to be hard. So I think it's a thing of opening up spaces and allowing each other as men to share whatever might be weighing you down. Just at least have one confidant. I think that would go a long mile.
Rightly said, it definitely goes a long way. And if you want to protect your mental health, then you need to be able to speak about most of the things that are actually beginning to challenge you, the things that you're having difficulties with. Okay, but it's important also to know who to speak to about these things and who to address this particular situations too. So what we've seen from a scientific point of view is people who have strong, neat families and communities are going to have better mental outcomes as compared to those who do not have such abilities or are not able to speak about challenges and get the help that they need when they need it. Yeah.
I think we can now get into the conversations on the adaptive and maladaptive coping mechanisms that men struggle with.
Great. So, oftentimes, and now just to speak about the most common of the maladaptive coping mechanisms is substance use, or in this case, what quickly turns into abuse. So people who end up, resorting to alcohol or to drugs or smoking as a way of taking the edge off, right? For me to perform better, now I need to, take a couple of pills or to use.
Dr. Agaba, you're muted.
Okay, that's what I checked. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So, the most common, oftentimes, is what we see as substance and alcohol use. Oftentimes, it's a way for people to cope. I am having challenges. Let me go drink because it tends to ease off the pressure a little bit, and then I'll become I'll feel better because oftentimes trying to change the way I feel. So substance use, people turn to other forms of addictions nowadays. Social media is quickly becoming a way where people just sort of hide. Others turn to promiscuity as a way also of taking the edge off. It's also easy for people to end up trying to cope using violence. People become violent. I lash out at people. I'm a lot more aggressive in how I confront situations that are not very comfortable for me. So this is some of the maladaptive patterns. This could vary from person to person. People shut themselves out of communities. So I just don't want to be associating with anyone. People become more isolated, more individualistic. We're seeing many times in workplaces one of the leading cause of the high employee turnover. So, I am hopping from one job to another. It's oftentimes because I have my own struggles going on, and it's easy for me to think that I'm feeling this way because of my workplace, and so I quit, move to the next workplace, and then even there, because I've not dealt with the underlying issues, I'm going to start conflicting with people. I'm not going to be as productive as I was, and after a couple of months, I'm moving on to another place. So we tend to see this pattern also as one of the reflections of I'm trying to cope. I'm looking for some solace, but I'm looking for it in the wrong ways and in the wrong places. Are we together?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we sure. Okay. So this is the most common of the maladaptive patterns that we see. We now sort of dive into really things that make us feel good and things of the kind. I don't know if you have any comments on this.
It's a very good thing that you have mentioned the part of social media, because I think that's one of the things that we're not looking at as an addiction, yet we are truly finding ourselves less functional around it. We find that someone cannot perform at work, spend the whole day scrolling. Before it starts with maybe 30 minutes to an hour. Before you know it, it's 8 hours, and it's time to clock out, and there is nothing that someone has done. It's also coming in between relationships. You find that someone cannot go away from their phones. They cannot even have a conversation with someone eye to eye without putting a phone in between them.
I agree. So we may look at it as the addiction, but right? So when I find that I'm faced with something difficult, rather than face it, I'd rather just be on my phone. If I'm at work and I'm finding it difficult to accomplish a task, it's a lot easier for me to just get on the phone, and the phone sort of relaxes me. And I watch a couple of TikTok videos, and I'm able to relax and smile and things of that kind. So it affects us very much. It is our coping mechanism, which eventually again turns into an illness on the other hand, right? So same thing with alcohol. Most times people drink to take off the edge, and before long they've become addicted, right? So for now, we're looking at it more as a coping mechanism, but eventually it ends up becoming an illness in itself, and it makes the whole situation worse than it was even at the beginning.
Right.
I want to now speak very briefly about the more recommended coping mechanisms.
The adaptive ones.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can I be able to share my screen?
Is it failing?
Yes. I'm not allowed, is what it says.
Okay, can you try now?
Not allowed.
I wonder why. Because I tried to switch off because of the people that had tried to get into our meeting.
Okay, I could as well just... Okay, yes, now it's back. Now it's back, just a second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so... I hope you can see my slides.
Yeah, we can. But people have now attacked you in the background. They're competing with you.
Is it better now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So, what are the positive coping mechanisms? Also, how can I cope? But also, how do I prevent? So, we like to say that prevention is better than cure. Before we wait to fall into mental unwellness, we talked about this earlier on. Like I mentioned today, we're not going to speak about disease, but rather mental unwellness. So, what are the positive ways in which I can cope, but also the positive ways in which I can be able to take care of my mental health to ensure that I'm not going to be going into illness. So we have what we call the big five of mental well-being. These are the things which, if we can pay good attention to them, they will ensure that we remain mentally well. And that's sleep, diet, exercise, meaningful relationships, and meaning in work. And again, here I'm speaking about mental and wellness, not mental illness. Once we cross over into illness, then we need medication, then we need therapy. But if it's just unwellness, so for example, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not as productive as I've been, or I'm finding it very difficult to cope with stress, then first and foremost, try to make sure that you get good sleep. So sleep is a biological need, it's not a luxury. And everyone is recommended to have at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night and to observe what we call good sleep hygiene. So there's lots of good information around good sleep hygiene, having a particular time when you actually go to bed and a particular time when you get up, having sleep ritual, ensure that it's dark, switch off the lights, avoid TV or your phone when you're going to bed, avoid caffeine, coffee, and the likes in the evening, because that's going to stimulate your brain and prevent it to actually sleep off. Try to avoid alcohol, smoking. All these particular things fall under what we call sleep hygiene. So it's important for us to get good sleep. You need to think about sleep like charging your phone, right? By the end of the day, your phone is probably 10% battery, and you all have to plug it in for it to be able to charge up. So it's important for you to get good sleep because that allows the mind to be refreshed and the mind to be able to function as it should, and to keep you energized, to keep you productive, to keep you healthy. So sleep is, again, I repeat, not a luxury, it is a need. We have a tendency nowadays, because we can carry our work at home, to extend the work day even into the time when we should be going to bed, going to sleep. So important for us to sleep 6 to 8 hours every night. Again, not just on the weekend, not just once in a while, but this should be the routine. The other is diet. It's important for us to have a healthy diet. And we all know what a healthy diet looks like. The right types of food, the right amount of food, at the right time. I need to emphasize the element of at the right time, because again, people who are at work, the typical thing is you're having lunch at 4 p.m. You're sitting down to your breakfast at 11 in the morning, because that's when you get a break. But so it's important that you have your meals on time. And the workplaces should be able to allow us to have a healthy diet, which actually also involves the time at which we eat. And also to rehydrate, to have at least 3 or 4 liters of water. These are very important because for the brain to function, it needs, the fuel, and that fuel comes from food. So if you're not eating well, you're going to find it very difficult for you to also be productive, for you to also be emotionally and psychologically healthy. So diet is very, very key. The other is exercise. And I put here regular exercise. Not once in a while exercise, not MTN marathon and Kabakwa run, in the year. No, important for you to have at least 30 minutes 4 times a week. Exercise should be able to get you to pant and sweat. That's when we know that you actually are doing exercise, and consistency is key. It's important for you to be consistent with your exercise. That's when it's going to give you the results that you need. You see, when we exercise, particular chemicals actually produce it, actually refresh the way the mind is working. So your exercise is going to be very key for you to keep your mind healthy and for you to be able to cope. I mean, after a stressful day, rather than going to sit down for a bottle of beer, go to the gym, go play football. I like to see nowadays many many indoor turfs that have been set up all over the place. And so when I see people out there playing football, I'm actually very happy, because that's a much more healthy way of dealing with the stress and fatigue of the day as compared to going to, drink or smoke or something like that. So exercise is very key, and the consistency must be, it should be consistent. So on top of those three, number 4 is meaningful relationships. This goes back to what also was mentioned earlier. So it's not so much about how many of these, but it's more about the quality of these friendships. And Twitter is not the place. So nowadays what happens, people get frustrated, they want to go to Twitter and put it out there. So many followers you have on Twitter, I'm not so sure that qualifies as a meaningful or a quality relationship that you have with people. It's important to have people that you confide in, people that you can trust, people that you can open up to and share very freely, very honestly. And it's not about how many they are, but just the quality of the friendship that you have. People that you can count on. So a friend in need is definitely a friend indeed. The friendship should be real, should be honest. Nowadays we have our friendships that are filled with all these filters, and so you're not able to be yourself around these people. It's important that to have real, honest friendships. I was actually talking to someone recently, and we were looking at, if you go back to my parents' generation, growing up, there was so many people that I remember my parents introducing me to, and for a long time we called them uncle or auntie, right? And then growing up later on, you try to find out, okay, so how are we related to uncle so-and-so? And they say, no, we're actually not related. This person has been my friend, from so long ago. But they are so close. Right. You'd almost think that these people are family, right? Mm-hmm. People will tell you that you find people who are so involved in your lives, and yet they're not actually related by blood, but they've been very, very good friends. And I find that that's a culture that's dying out nowadays. How many people can you actually count on? The kinds of friendships that the generation of our parents had, oftentimes not the kind that we're having now. Most of our friendships are very flimsy. But it's important to have those real, those honest friendships, because they're very, very important and very key. So it's also important to have a relationship with God. And this has been scientifically proven, irrespective of who you refer to as God, be it Allah, but having that relationship with God is also very key for your mental health. And it should be a real relationship, again, not with your pastor, not with your church, but a relationship with God has been shown to have positive outcomes on your mental health. One of the studies that was done during the COVID pandemic in the US, they were looking at people depending on their religious affiliations. And they noticed that those who are affiliated as atheists, who had no belief in God, had worse mental health outcomes as compared to those who are religious. So having a meaningful relationship with God is very important for your mental health. But also a relationship with yourself. How often do you sit down with yourself and just take stock of how you're doing? How's the week been? How am I faring? How's my life going? Am I hitting my targets? So how often do you have time just for yourself to sit and, take stock with what you're struggling with? Oftentimes, and also for the men, is you have all these responsibilities, you have some people to take care of, you have, the weight of society on your shoulders, and sometimes you don't have time to just stop for a minute and find out how you're doing. You're busy taking care of everyone else and providing for everyone else. And oftentimes you forget to take care of yourself. And we've seen this happen. You very quickly take the children to the hospital for their checkups and all, but how often have you as a man gone for a checkup to check, your blood pressure or your blood sugar and just know how you're doing? So important for you to also have a relationship with yourself. It's advisable to have a journal where you note down how you're feeling today, note down your mood, note down what you're struggling with, note down what you'd like to improve about yourself. So having a relationship with yourself is also very key. So meaningful relationships are very important, very pertinent to our mental well-being. And then lastly, finding meaning in work, So do work that has meaning, or find meaning in work, or find some purpose, And purpose is not about what we do or how fast we do it, but why we do it and how we do it. So it's important for you to be able to know why do I wake up every morning and go to the office? Why do I do the particular job or the particular task before me. Because when you have meaning, when you have purpose, you're more likely to be to enjoy it. You're more likely to do it well. You're more likely to endure and cope with whatever challenges that it might present to you. So those are the big 5, and these are the more recommended ways in which we can cope with any challenges that we may be facing in terms of our mental health. So again, like I mentioned, good sleep, healthy diet, regular exercise, meaningful relationships, and finding meaning in work. Any thoughts on this or any questions?
Do you have any questions for Dr. Agaba before he closes the presentation? Emily, Jagaban, Kamanile, and Oswald. Do you have anything to say?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, basically what I would like to say is that it's been an interesting conversation with Agaba, and also looking at the direction that this conversation has been taking. Also taking into account what Oswald was talking about. That was something still that I think at the end of the day, as I believe we mentioned earlier, it comes down to the individual himself. Yeah, it feels like he wants to share his burdens with the people around him. He feels like the environment around him is accommodative to support him. Those are things that I think at the end of the day comes boils down to the individual. But also, I believe these are the conversations that we are having right now. These are conversations that somehow can get to barriers that are there that limit people to easily share their burdens. So at the end of the day, it comes back down to the individual himself. What it feels like is safe to share. What's not safe to share with a bigger audience, maybe that can be shared at an individual level, probably with a mental health practitioner, something like that. But beyond that, yes, Dr. Agaba, what you shared was really wonderful. Also given the fact that as me myself, I'm engaged in we do run activities that are connected to mental health, especially with the children. That's why I had to make sure that I listen to this and get some few pointers here and there. So it's been very, very beneficial. Thank you very much, Dr. Agaba, and also the host.
Thank you so much, Kamanile. Oswald, your hand is up. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you so much once again for this conversation. It has been such an eye-opener. And to add on to everything that has been said, I think I'd like to, it was a question. Sorry, I've been kind of multitasking a little bit, but I've definitely been fully focused. Back to what Dr. Agaba was saying. Dr. Agaba was telling us about having better areas like people we can communicate with, and to avoid like the whole having scenarios where, for example, you're misunderstood, having like a brotherly interventions through meeting up on weekends where you have talks that are more about how you are, not just about football and the likes. And I guess I think I understood more after, because I came in this whole meeting with, the meetup with the whole view of, for example, yes, a man should share, or people generally should share and learn how to know that it's okay not to be okay. But I think I've been more open now to like, yes, we should share, but like we should have better groups of sharing, like generally as people, not only as men. And also, I guess what I was trying to put out was maybe just let's have like a different point of sharing, coming from like, yes, men have issues and everything, but also yes, men should say that they have issues and have better communities of saying it. But the conversation for me was more of, who am I supposed to share this information with? Because if, for example, I shared it with the wrong people, won't it become a rumor? Won't it become this and that? There are very many fears like I consider, or even who I am. But generally, as a person, it plays a big role in me saying, who am I going to share this with? Because of who I am, not because of the fact that I'm a man and I shouldn't do this. It should take me away from my roles. No, but like, I have this type of like character traits. I'm this type of person. Am I going to just go out there and, and put out all my burdens, and will I get what I want out there the right way? That was my biggest worry. That's why. I don't know if I've been No,
I've understood your point. I answered your point very loud and clear, and you raise a good point, and I do agree with you that we can't just go around sharing everything with just anybody. It's important to have particular people that we can actually be able to share with, and that's what I talk about: meaningful, quality relationships. They're not going to be many, so I'll be very surprised if you have 10 people that you can say you have a meaningful quality relationship with. Oftentimes there'll be a few people you've journeyed with, people you can trust, people who have your best interests at heart, people who are friends indeed, not just people who are out, for your decline, or people who want to see you fail. But so you want to have people that you actually count on, people that you can trust, those who if I'm in a situation and I call, Kamanyere, for example, I know he will come through for me and he will help me. So that's what you need to be. And again, you need to make friends before you need them. That's what we always say. So I don't wait to get a situation where I look for someone I can be there for. No, but already I should have people with whom I create and cultivate very helpful, very strong quality relationships with. And if I treat those people well, then I will most likely also be able to have a good relationship with them. So oftentimes we don't want to wait till I have a situation, then I go out looking for someone. I should have that person even before, right? So I think it's important, it's very key for us to have those groups of people that we count on that are healthy for us, and that's going to help us with our mental health and mental well-being. So I think that's a very good point that you make. Yeah.
Thank you so
Great,
much.
then.
Do we close? Can we close off? Or
No, I want to say something.
briefly, Emily?
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Agava. It has really been a very good talk about mental health, which is one of the biggest things that people really try to avoid, not because they know what to do, but sometimes people don't know what to do. So I really appreciate all of us here that we try to give it time, and we know that one day we shall achieve the best out of it. I wanted to tell something to Oswald. I don't know if he's the Ozzy I know. There is a friend of mine called Ozzy, but I'm seeing Oswald, though they kind of look alike.
Yes, I'm Ozzy. Who is this?
Okay, nice to meet you here. So, like you say, it is a very big challenge. Even us who are talking here, I think I would refer it to trust. I was actually listening in with my colleague, and she was literal on your side, and she said, you can always have challenges on your head, you can have problems, but you don't know whom to tell, to power out to, because the challenge is trust issues. I may tell you something, and before you know it, the talk somewhere, everybody's laughing at me, people are not understanding, what I'm going through, and I regret why I even told you. But Dr. Agaba answered you, that you have to take some time and know who to tell. You don't just tell everybody. And gradually, you may have no friend. Out of 10 people, you think that they're friends. You try. It's a try and error, maybe I should say. So let me try this one person. Maybe you've given them really time. You first tell them something, maybe you don't really take a very, very, very big secret, and you see how they go about it. I'm just thinking, I don't know if it would work for you, because I don't really have very big challenge with trust issues, and because there is how you feel sometimes, okay, if it is bad, it is bad. Maybe I'll go about it. I can't hide it, but we are different. Me, I may take it okay, and I don't want to hide something, but some people, they want confidentiality. They want their privacy. So I really want to appreciate us, and I pray that we hold more and more of these kinds of meetings, and we learn from them. And then apologies to whatever happened in the middle of the session. It happened twice, and then I was like, wow, I think somebody is trying to distract us, but we're not going to give up on what we are up to. And that's what the world is all like, by the way. You're focused and you're like, I'm determined to do this, and before you know it, something comes up. And if you're not focused, actually, that is when you get to know, was I really focused or not? But I want to appreciate everybody, and especially the team leader, who was able to manage the situation, and also Dr. Agaba for being patient. Otherwise, if it was a weak person, you would have freaked out. But thank you, everybody, for your patience and the time that you have given to this. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you. Jagaban, you have something to say before we sign out? Right. Dr. Dennis, thank you so much. We can use the emojis for the hands. We clap for him. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, and for Emily, I think you're trying to clap for him. Thank you so much for sparing your afternoon to have this conversation with us and with Dr. Agaba. And Jagaban, is your hand up, or are you trying to clap? Yes, we are also sorry about I've had to check, to look it up to see what it means. And I've seen, I think, something called hackers that share upon. I have to read more into it and see how it works, because I think most of the solutions available have been related to Zoom, and this is Google Meet. Perhaps it's something that I'll try to read into, and it doesn't happen again. For all the online engagements that we have had, this is a first time. So if you have any ideas of how to guide us and protect us from such hackers, we will truly appreciate. Dr. Dennis, as always, thank you so much for your generosity with your knowledge. Really appreciate. We need the interventions, and we need these conversations. For those that are still online with us, please make sure that you join us for the last part of this conversation that is going to be happening on Thursday at 10 a.m. We're going to be there in the morning. I hope the hackers will be asleep at the time. 10 a.m. we shall be handling 2 core topics on how to know that you're transitioning from unwellness to illness, and how and where to find the help. Thank you so much, Dr. Dennis. I remain yours truly, Nabuguzi Chwanuka. For those that may have missed out, or for the friends that you may not have seen online, this conversation is going to be shared on the podcast, and you can catch it. I think the sharings on the podcast will be on Friday and Saturday, because we're kind of still in a break Tomorrow will be Just Noise. We'll be having Brown Noise published, and then the conversations will be shared thereafter, Friday and Saturday. But make sure you don't miss out on the Thursday conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Dennis. Thank you, Oswald. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Kamanyide. And Jagaban. Do have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too. We have come to the very end of this particular sharing. I don't know what to call it. I can't call it an episode. But yes, we have come to the very end of what we had during the break. Should have come earlier, but yeah, life happened and you'll hear it. You'll hear everything that went on. So yes, thank you so much for tuning into Hashtime in Navuguzi Chiwanuka, and thank you for waiting for me. My goodness, I can't thank you enough. Whew. So I don't know what I can do about this. Yes, thank you for tuning into Hashtime with Navuguzi Chiwanuka. If you loved what you heard, make sure you subscribe to Hashtime with Navuguzi Chiwanuka in your podcast platform of choice, and make sure that you hit the follow button on our social media handles. We are at Hashtime with Navuguzi Chiwanuka on Facebook and Instagram, and on X, Twitter. We are at HTNK Podcast. If you wish to follow me personally, I am Navuguzi Chiwanuka everywhere.